of where they pulled the car over, what type of establishment is this? You said it was a little business area?
It's like a strip mall.
Okay. And what was the stores or area that he pulled into near?
He pulled in near next to like a restaurant.
Did you or did another officer speak with the first person to come into contact with the defendant?
Yes.
Okay. And what was his name, if you remember?
Anthony Polanimo.
Based on his description and other descriptions of other witnesses, how did the defendant appear and how did he act when he pulled over and got out of the car?
The witnesses and everyone described that he pulled into it at a high rate of speed and they heard squealing tires when the vehicle came to a stop. Justin immediately exited the vehicle. He seemed upset. His behavior was considered erratic by many of the witnesses. He would be yelling and screaming, "Oh my God, what have I done? My child is dead." And then he would stop and he would just have a blank look on his face and just stand there. When he pulled Cooper out of the vehicle, he placed him down on the hot pavement.
When he did that, did anyone assist him in getting the child out to the pavement?
Yes, Anthony did.
When they did that, how did Anthony describe the defendant's behavior when they put the child on the pavement?
When they put the child on the pavement, he said it looked like Justin was messing around. He didn't know what Justin was doing. And he goes, we need to do CPR. We need to do something for the child. Justin kind of looked at him, and then he just stopped.
What did Anthony do?
Anthony started CPR.
When Anthony started CPR on the defendant's son, what did the defendant do?
When Anthony started, the defendant stood up, walked to the other side of the vehicle, and got on his phone.
When the defendant, after he separated himself from the child and got on the phone, did he appear to be, per the witnesses, talking on the phone?
Yes.
Did you talk to officers who actually encountered him?
Yes, I did.
What did they say he was doing on the phone?
He stated he was telling somebody on the phone that his child had died.
Now, when you spoke with the defendant, what did he say about actually speaking to somebody on the phone?
He stated he had not gotten anybody on the phone.
Have you reviewed preliminarily his phone logs?
I have.
What did those reflect?
They reflected 3 phone calls.
What was the first?
First phone call was to Leanna. It looked like it was a missed phone call. The second phone call was to the Home Depot Corporate Center, their main number. And there was a third phone number, and it was the same one. It was to the Home Depot Corporate Center. And it appeared that this phone number went through, and on his records it said 6 minutes worth of conversation.
Were you able to track back to where that would have gone to, this call to the Home Depot Center?
We did.
Okay, and where would that have been?
It went back to toddler room 5 at Little Aprons Academy, where Cooper attended school.
So you have phone records suggesting he was on the phone for 5 or 6 minutes.
Correct.
You have the officers stating that he was actually talking to somebody on the phone.
Correct.
Did you confront him with this when he said that he was not talking to anybody?
I did.
And what did he say?
He said he wasn't talking to anybody on the phone.
Okay, let's talk about, did you ask the defendant how this could have occurred?
Yes, I did.
What did he say?
The defendant thought his excuse was he fell asleep.
Let's talk about that a second. First of all, you stated that at Chick-fil-A, he was active, talking, walking, waving to people. Did the defendant tell you how he secured the child back into that car seat and what happened when he did that at the Chick-fil-A?
He did. Justin took Cooper out to the car. He went into the back seat where the car seat was situated. It's a rear-facing car seat, so Cooper's head would be in between or almost in between the 2 front seats. He put Cooper in the vehicle. He stated he strapped him in tight. He went through a little spiel about how he had watched YouTube videos about, car seat regulations and stuff, and he knew that this was the right car seat and the right way of doing it. And he straps him in tight. And Cooper gives him a kiss, and he gives him a kiss back. And he says he always gives him a kiss in case they get into a car accident and he dies. He wanted Cooper to, his last memory, or Cooper to remember that he'd been loved or that his daddy loved him.
So he straps him in before driving away, and he's kissing him, son's kissing him back, and they're having a conversation.
That's correct.
Now, you talked about this U-turn and then going to a light where you make a decision to either go to work or turn to the daycare.
Yes, sir.
Okay. The U-turn, about how far is it to get from the Chick-fil-A to this U-turn?
Seconds.
When you get to this U-turn, what direction would he have had to turn to see the oncoming traffic and then make the U-turn.
It's a left-hand U-turn. He would have had to look to his right.
And what is to his right?
It would have been the car seat, which is visible in between the two seats.
And I know we're in a probable cause hearing. Did you take photographs in this case?
Hundreds.
Okay. I'm just going to show you two. Do you think they would help Judge Cox?
I guess I do.
I'll show you what I've already marked for identification purposes and shown to defense counsel, States Exhibits 1 and 2. May I approach, Judge?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. You recognize States Exhibits 1 and 2?
Yeah, these are photos from, it appears, from the car, from the crime scene at Acres Mill.
Okay, and do those fairly and accurately represent the car and the car seat as viewed at the scene where the car was left?
They do.
Your Honor, I would tender States Exhibits 1 and 2. No objection.
Admitted without objection.
First, before publishing States Exhibit 1 to the judge, will you explain, can you actually see from outside the car looking through the window the car seat before you even get into the car?
You can.
Okay, and States Exhibit 2, does that reflect where the car seat is in proximity to the driver in that car?
Yes, it does.
And is that consistent with your description of inches?
Yes.
Okay, you can publish those to the judge. Thank you. From the time he left the Chick-fil-A to that light where he had to make that decision, have you driven that distance?
I have.
How many times?
10 at least.
How long does it take to get from having left the Chick-fil-A parking lot to that light?
30 to 40 seconds.
So 30 to 40 seconds from the time he has strapped his child in, kissed him, and then he says forgot.
Correct.
Now the defendant, you stated that he must have fallen asleep. Did you speak with daycare workers about how the child acted on days he went to Chick-fil-A with his father before he came to daycare?
I did.
How did the daycare workers describe his behavior when he would go to Chick-fil-A?
When they go to Chick-fil-A, Cooper would walk in, he'd be awake. Walking in, he just spent some time with his dad, he'd be happy.
Now, the time it takes, how long would it take? I know you said 30 minutes to that, or 30 seconds to that stoplight. How long would it take to get to the spot where he actually parked?
From the light to there, less than 2 minutes.
Now, when you talked to the defendant about what he did that day, did you talk to him about what he did while he was driving the car to work from Chick-fil-A and then when he parked, what he was doing?
I did.
And did he say he was doing anything out of the ordinary?
No. And we asked him, were you on the cell phone? Were you talking to somebody? Were you on the computer? Was there any other distractions? And he stated no.
When he parked, how did he park? Did he pull straight into his space or something else?
When he pulls from the parking lot, he pulls past the space. After he pulls past the space, he goes into reverse, and he backs up. And when he backs up in between two cars that were parked in the road behind him. Mm-hmm. And then he pulls forward into the parking space.
And the parking space he pulls into, what is to the left? If I am the person driving the car, what is to my left?
If you're the person driving the car, to your left is another car.
And where is the driver's side on the other side of the defendant's car?
No, the driver's side, if you turn to your left, you're going to have a parked car, mm-hmm. and then defendant's car. Okay. And then to the right is a grassy area.
Okay. So the right is actually a grassy area with no cars or anything?
Correct.
Okay. Now, did his car have a backing camera or anything like that that would have assisted him when he stops, pulls back, and backs up to pull in?
And nothing that I could get to turn on.
So what would he have had to done to back up?
He would have had to look either in the rearview mirror and use both his side mirrors.
Now, you stated that he said he wasn't on the phone or anything like that when he parked. When he got out, when he parked the car, did he immediately get out?
No, he did not.
Did he take anything to work with him that day?
Yes, he did.
What did he take with him to work?
He had a large computer bag.
Did he tell you where he reached to get that bag?
The large computer bag sits in front of the passenger seat, in the front of the car.
Okay. Which way would he have had to turn to pick that up?
He would have had to turn to his right, lean over to the center console, and pick up the computer bag from the right side of the car.
And what would have been right there?
It would have been Cooper's car seat.
Now, you're talking about, we've seen the pictures of Cooper's car seat. I guess you know how tall, how long Cooper was at the time of death.
Yes.
Did you actually get some type of demonstrative aid to help you and law enforcement see how a child would fit into that car seat?
We did.
how would Cooper's head have appeared in that car seat?
The mannequin we chose was, the same size. The head was clearly visible, poking up over the car seat.
And did that demonstrative aid, was that actually a little bit shorter than Cooper?
Yes.
Did it have hair like Cooper had?
No.
And after he got his laptop back, now did the defendant immediately get out of the car?
He did not.
So after he parks, how long does the defendant sit in his car before he actually exits to go in the building?
It's around 30 seconds from the time he parks the vehicle till the time he gets out and shuts the door.
So he's sitting in there 30 seconds.
Yes, sir.
Now, you talked about the defendant talking about his car seat and how it was too I guess it was the correct one, height, weight, things like that. Have you actually looked into this car seat and looked at the owner's manual?
I have.
Okay. Is he within the requirements, or did Cooper exceed the requirements of that car seat?
He exceeded the requirements by several inches.
Now, he talked about his day. Did the defendant talk to you about what he did for lunch that day?
He did.
What did he tell you he had done for lunch that day?
He got picked up by two of his friends for lunch. They picked him up. They went to lunch, went to Publix to eat, ate at the hot bar, went to the UPS store, and then came back.
Did he say about what time he got back, or was he able to give you a definite time?
He said they left about 12:30 and got back, well, actually, they left like 11:30, got back around 12:30.
Now, while you're talking to the defendant, does he obviously know why he's there?
Yes,
You've already talked to him about the fact that his child had been left in the car, and that's what he's talking to you about.
correct.
At any time, did he ever mention to you that he had returned to that car during the day?
No, sir.
Did you find that he had?
Yes, I did.
How did you determine that?
We pulled surveillance video for the entire day that the car was parked in the parking lot, and upon reviewing the surveillance video, around 12:42, we see a green car pull up in front of Justin's car.
Now, let me stop you there. Did you eventually find out where he had gone during lunch that he had left out?
Yes, sir.
Where had he gone?
He had gone to Publix, they had gone to the UPS store, and then they had gone to the Home Depot.
Why had they gone to Home Depot?
And they had gone to the Home Depot and he had purchased 2 bags or 2 boxes of light bulbs.
So when he comes back to the car, what does he do? Well, first of all, you said a car pulls up. What
The car
happens?
pulls up, and from interviewing the 2 friends he went to lunch with, they pull up, he gets out of the car, they immediately take off. You can see him walk up to the car. He approaches the car from the driver's side, approaches his car, opens up the driver's side door, and he kind of tosses the light bulbs inside. He's all the way inside the frame, but he just kind of tosses the light bulbs inside the car.
Does he approach from the rear or from the front?
He approaches from the left-hand side, from kind of on an angle, Judge.
Is that angle consistent with that photograph that the judge has,
It is,
where he can see the car seat?
correct.
That calls for speculation. I object to that.
I just asked if it's consistent, Judge.
Overruled.
When he approaches, does it appear, is this video, can you describe to the judge how it appears he reaches in and where his head is?
When he reaches in, he comes up, he opens up the door, and as he's reaching in, he kind of turns his head a little bit. He's in there, he has a clear view, and he kind of turns his head and then just tosses the light bulbs into the car.
After he does that, does he hang out at the car very long or anything of that nature?
No.
What does he do?
He shuts the door, turns around, and immediately starts walking into the Home Depot.
At some point as he's walking back away from that car, does anyone else walk by him, and how does he react?
Yeah, it appears another, we'll say that's another person, passes him walking towards his car as he's walking away from his car. As that person approaches him, he stops. He kind of stands there for a little bit. As the guy walks past him, you can see that man walk up towards his car. He starts a little bit. Justin starts a little bit. He stops. The guy walks past the car, and then Justin gets on the phone and goes inside the Home Depot.
Now, during this day, additionally, did the defendant get any emails or anything from the daycare?
Yes. He received a group email from his teacher, Cooper's teacher, Michelle Gray, and that email came in around 1:30 p.m.
Let's talk a little bit about the movies. You said he was going to the movies, and his coworkers corroborated that, right?
Yes.
Okay, what time was the movie they were going to see?
5 o'clock.
What, did you pull do you have the defendant's phone records and logs and things of that nature?
We did.
Okay, from looking at his phone log, well, first of all, let me ask you this. Do you have the phone records from his provider or anything of that nature yet?
We do not.
Okay, and how long do you think it'll be before you get those?
AT&T could be 6 weeks or more.
But you've been able to look at his phone.
Correct.
Looking at his phone, did you see any phone calls?
Yes.
Okay, who were the phone calls between and what time, approximately?
Are we talking about the phone calls made that afternoon, or there's no phone calls made during the day?
Okay, just approaching 4 o'clock, were there phone calls between the defendant and his wife?
Yes.
Okay. Tell the judge a little bit about that.
Around 4 o'clock, he receives a phone call from his wife, Leanna. They kind of play phone tag a little bit. He receives one, misses it, he calls her back, and then he calls her like a third time and actually gets through to her. They have about a minute, a little over a minute phone conversation.
And was that phone call that they actually had the conversation with, was that at 4:04 p.m.?
Yes, it was.
Now, did the defendant ever mention anything about getting text from his wife that afternoon as well?
No.
Did his phone reflect anything about text from his wife?
No.
The tickets to this 5 o'clock movie, were they going to have to purchase tickets when they got there, or had they already been purchased?
No. One of his friends owed him a little bit of money, stated that he already bought his ticket and that he knew about it. Justin, knew about it.
At any point during the afternoon, did he talk to one of his coworkers about when he was going to arrive at the movie theater?
Around 3:45, he does contact through, it's like an interoffice or IM, it could possibly be Google chat, but they're sitting there chatting back and forth, and around 3:45, he let them know he was going to be late to the movie.
So he said he was going to be late to the movie?
Correct.
So after 5 o'clock?
Correct.
Was that in any way different from what the defendant told you in his statement?
Yes.
What did the defendant tell you about going to the movies and whether he was going to be early or late?
The defendant stated that he had left early. He had left work early to get to the movies and beat the after-work rush.
What time did he actually leave work again?
He left work at about 4:16 p.m.
How long does it take to get to the movie theater from there?
Less than 10 minutes.
And was this immediately after having had that phone conversation with his wife? Within 9 minutes or so?
Within 9 minutes or so.
So he tells coworkers he's going to be late, tells you he wanted to leave to be early. This was a Wednesday afternoon?
It was.
Okay. Let's talk about his demeanor during his interview with you. Could you tell the judge a little bit about his demeanor and whether it seemed odd to you in any way?
His demeanor would fluctuate also. He started off trying to work himself up, and we're watching him on the camera as he's doing this, and he's walking around and he's rubbing his eyes, and he's it looked like he's trying to hyperventilate himself, and then he'll just stop. He'll stop. He walked over, he sat, and he looked through. We had a map on the wall that's covering up a two-way mirror, and he sits there and he looks at the map. He'll sit up, he'll stand down, sit back down. No tears, no, real emotion coming out of him except for, the huffing, I would put it.
When you talked to him, did he give you any background as he used to work in law enforcement?
Yes, he
Did you
did.
tell the judge about that, and have you determined exactly what it was he did?
We've received two stories now. We received a story that he worked as a jailer, and we received a story that he worked as a dispatcher. In his own words to me on the interview, he worked for 5 years as a dispatcher down in Tuscaloosa, Alabama.
When he spoke with you, did he I don't want you to take offense at this, but did he use cop language with you?
He did.
How so?
He would talk when he sat there and he spoke with me. He would sit there and he would say, like Alpha Bravo, everything would be spelled out in phonetics.
And through the time you're talking with him about his son and his son's death, did you ever see any tears coming from him?
No.
Let's talk a little bit about his wife and the statements that she gave. When I assume she was supposed to show up at the daycare to pick up Cooper, correct?
Correct.
What time did she actually show up there?
She showed up around about 4:51.
When she showed up, according to witnesses at the daycare, did she make any comments that seemed out of the ordinary?
She did. Once she walked into the daycare, she walked back to Cooper's classroom where she ran into Michelle, and she asked, what are you doing here? And Leanna's like, well, I'm here to pick up Cooper. And, like, Ross never dropped Cooper off. And she's like, just got really calm. She's like, well, I don't know what to do. They walk back out into the lobby, and in front of several witnesses, all of a sudden she states, Ross must have left him in the car. And they're like, what? There's no other reason. No other explanation, excuse me. Ross must have left him in the car. And they try to console her, and they're like, no, there's 1,000 reasons. He could have taken him to lunch or something. We don't know yet. And she's like, no.
Eventually, did she speak with law enforcement back at the treehouse, the place where the defendant worked?
She did.
Okay. When police spoke with her there, did they say anything of note about her reaction at the scene?
Her reaction at the scene, she didn't show any emotion when they asked her, or actually when they notified her of Cooper's death. She did make a statement that, this was her worst nightmare.
And after being told that he was deceased, did she ask to see her son or anything like that?
No.
Who did she ask to see?
She has to see her husband.
Did officers witness a phone call from her mother to her?
Yes, they did.
Her being Leanna.
Yes.
And what did they describe happened during this conversation?
The officer stated that while they were sitting there talking to Leanne, she either received or made a phone call from her mom. And she described it as, or the officers, detectives, described it as she just started screaming. And she's like, what do you mean Cooper's no longer here? What do you mean? And during this conversation, with all this emotion coming out, she's asked Leanne, they can
And the
hear
emotion,
this.
who's the emotion coming
The
from?
emotion's coming from her mom, or who she identified as her mom. And during this, she's like, why aren't you crying? Why aren't you reacting to this?
And what did Leanna say?
She said, I must be in shock.
How were they hearing the other end of the conversation?
It was so loud, Judge. Such an outburst, I would put it.
At some point after, did they bring Leanna back and interview her as well?
Yes, they did.
And did they note the same lack of emotion from her when they were talking?
That is correct.
Now, did you finally see, did you see emotion from the defendant at some point?
Yes,
And at some point, did you put the defendant and his wife in a room together?
I did.
When you did that, who was it that got emotional?
The father.
And could you tell the judge, what was he being emotional about? What was the main thing he was crying about or sobbing about or whatever he was doing?
It was all about him. I can't believe this is happening to me. I can't believe, this happened to me. Why am I being punished for this? And it continued. It was all very one-sided.
Did he talk about losing his job?
He talked about losing his job. What are we going to do? I'm going to lose my job. I'll be charged with a felony.
Did his wife ever say anything to him about what he said to police?
She asked him, she had him sit down, and he starts going through this, and she looks at him. She's like, well, did you say too much?
At some point during this conversation, did the defendant try to describe to Leanna how Cooper looked when he pulled him out of that car?
He did. As they're sitting there talking, and they're sitting there face to face, and they were left alone in the interview room, and he looks at her, and he's like, he looked peaceful.
Did he describe the mouth and eyes of this child?
He said Cooper's eyes were closed, his mouth was closed, and he just looked peaceful lying there.
Now, at the scene, did you and other witnesses see the child that was laying there on the pavement?
I did not witness Cooper on the scene.
Have you seen the photographs?
I've seen the photographs, and I was present during Cooper's autopsy, yes.
And did the other officers describe how he looked on the scene?
Yes, they did.
Were his eyes closed?
They are not closed.
Was his mouth closed?
It was not closed.
And in describing how Cooper looked to Leanna, did the defendant say anything to you that brought concern?
And once again, as we're watching their reunion, after he's talking about how Cooper looked peaceful and his eyes were closed and it just, looked like he's sleeping, he goes, I dreaded how he would look.
Dreaded past tense.
As in past tense.
It's kind of common sense, Detective, but are some of these things you've learned from going back and watching things again as this investigation is developed?
That's correct.
So I guess you found evidence since the arrest to further your investigation, to kind of further your opinion on this case, correct?
That is correct.
Now, the defendant, how did he say that he first noticed Cooper was in the car?
The first time the defendant noticed Cooper as he was driving down the road, he went to make a lane change, and he looked to his right as he was changing lanes, and that's when he noticed that Cooper was laying back there. And this was as he was driving to the movie theater.
And did he say that he drove further, or he immediately pulled over?
He drove a little bit further and then immediately pulled over.
Now, during the day, based on the descriptions he gave and the paths he traveled by the, I guess, video evidence and things of that nature, would there have been other times that he would have also turned that direction during the day when he was driving that car?
That's correct.
Tell the judge a little bit about when he left work that day at 4:15, I guess 10 minutes after he got off the phone with his wife. Did he get back out to his car and linger, or how did he leave? How fast did he leave?
No, he was in the car mere seconds. He didn't take time to roll down the window or do anything along that line. In the car mere seconds, and the car rolls off.
How hot was it that day?
I believe it was
Generally.
Generally like 88 degrees, I believe, at that time.
And it had been a hot day during the entire day?
Yes, sir.
And he stated that as he pulled up, he kept the windows up.
Correct.
How long did it take from the time he closed the door to that car starting to roll?
Seconds.
So the door closes, he gets in, puts the key in, turns the ignition, starts it up, and drives off in 2 seconds.
That's correct.
Did you speak with Lieutenant Farrell in this case?
I did.
Lieutenant Farrell, what's his job?
Lieutenant Farrell's my immediate supervisor, unit commander.
Now, did he approach the car at any point at the scene?
He did.
About how long after the defendant had pulled over?
Over an hour.
And when he approached the car and stuck his head, did he stick his head in?
He did.
When he did that, was there anything of note that he noticed an hour and 20 minutes after with the door open?
Yeah, there was a foul odor or a stench coming from the vehicle.
Now, did you actually access that vehicle later as well?
I did.
And why did you do that?
We executed a search warrant on that vehicle later on that night.
When you executed that search warrant and you went inside that vehicle hours later, did you notice anything?
Yeah, it smelled like it was a foul odor. It smelled like decomposition or death.
Now, just to prove the elements of this crime show, did you speak with the ME about whether this child would have suffered cruel or excessive physical pain?
We did.
Okay. What did he say? Would it have been a painful death?
Yes,
Did you notice were there any injuries to the child's face?
there were.
And what were those?
The way it's explained, there were several marks on the child's face. It would have come from the child or a scratch being made while the child was alive, and then not healing, not scabbing over or anything like that, and just soon after he passed away.
Were there any injuries to the child back of the child's head?
Yes, there were abrasions to the back of the child's head.
I'm going to turn your attention and talk a little bit about motive and intent in this case and about evidence you may have uncovered regarding that. First, talking about negligence and motive. Specifically on the day of the incident, on June the 18th, 2014, in reviewing the computers and phones and things like that of the defendants, did you uncover anything of what he was doing during that day while his child was out in the car?
Yes.
Okay. What did you uncover?
He was having up to 6 different conversations with different women. It appeared from the messages from Kik mostly, which is a messaging service.
And is that a computer-related messaging service?
It is.
And these conversations he was having with these females, were these, of what nature were they?
The most common term would be sexting.
Were photos being sent back and forth between these women and the defendant during this day while the child's out in the car?
Yes, there were photos of his exposed penis, erect penis being sent. There were also photos of women's breasts being sent back to him.
Now, have you located every one of these girls that he's had contact with?
I have not.
Have you located any of them?
I've located 2 of them.
Okay. The first one, I won't use the username, but I guess, for lack of a better term, the older one. Did you speak with her?
I did.
And what did she say?
She stated that she had first met Ross, and she knew him as Ross through Scout, which is another messaging service, and that he had met up and that he wanted to hook up with her.
And did she talk to you and confirm the nature of what you saw on these chats back and forth?
Yes, she did.
Now, I'm going to turn your attention, was there also another girl that you met and that you've spoken with?
I have.
And how old is that girl?
She is 17 at this time.
How old was she when the defendant began these?
Judge, I'm going to object. I mean, I let a little bit of this go, but I don't see how this has anything to do with anything.
Your Honor,
If this is something that's going on during the middle of the day, I don't think it's relevant. What would be relevant would be the time period when the child was initially left in the car.
Your Honor, this goes to negligence through the day, what he's doing through the day instead of worrying about his kid. It also goes to motive and marital problems between he and his wife and his unhappiness.
I'm unclear as to the time frame. Do you have?
Yes, I'll clear it up. Okay. And so these messages and these chats, did they start in the morning?
They do.
Okay. And did they continue throughout the day?
They do.
And when did they end?
Around 3 o'clock that afternoon.
So about an hour before he left.
Overrule the objection.
Now, this 16-year-old girl, with these chats or now 17, they started when she was 16.
Correct.
Were these sexually involved as well?
They were.
Okay. Did she send him a picture that day?
She did.
Of what?
She sent a picture of her exposed breasts.
And did he send any pictures to her?
He did. He sent a picture of his exposed erect penis.
Now, we talked a little bit about these computers. Have you guys done examinations on these computers?
We have.
Are you finished with your examination of these computers?
We've only scratched the surface.
Now, based upon your review of these computers and other devices that he's had contact with, is it obvious that he has deleted some of the things from cross-referencing these computers and phones and items?
Yes.
Now, I'm going to turn your attention, again, like I said, motive as to his marital status, issues he's having, and his state of mind. Did the wife tell you anything they were having any problems in their marriage?
Leanna stated that they're having intimacy problems.
Going back to show how far this has been in his mind and the relationship between the two of them, did some messages with even different girls from back in 2013 confirm that he'd been...
Judge, I'm going to object again. I mean, if this is being offered somehow to prove motive, I don't know what in the world something back in 2013's got to do with this at all. There's been no connection whatsoever between the events of that day and the death of this child and this fantasy texting or whatever it is. There's no connection at all.
Judge?
Repeat your question.
Okay. In specifically to the motive or issue of having marital problems...
Let me hear the question.
Okay, I'm sorry. Did he have chats regarding sexual activities with other women while his wife was sleeping and while his child was in the room somewhere?
Well, again, what time frame are we doing?
Oh, I'm sorry. This would have been back around 2013, leading up to 2014 when this happened. It's an ongoing activity of the marital issues, Judge.
So your contention is that proves motive how?
It proves motive because he was unhappy in his marriage. We plan to show that he wanted to live a child-free life, or there's evidence to suggest that based on his Internet searches.
Well, I'm still going to object, Judge. If you're unhappy in your marriage, you get a divorce. We're a long, long way from having some sort of fantasy texting situation to the death of a child. There's no connection there at all. So I'm going to object to this. It's just not relevant.
Judge,
Well, this is a probable cause hearing, and there's no jury, and the court will consider the evidence for whatever weight and value it should be given in the court's determination of probable cause. So overrule the objection.
and I'll just speed this along. Were there texts and texts and messages talking about the fact that his wife knew he had cheated on her before?
Yes, there were.
And let's talk about and move up to about 2 weeks before the child's death. With one of these people he was having a conversation with, did he talk about exposing himself while he's chatting and messaging this girl?
Yes.
And was he sending pictures?
Yes.
And did he admit to her that he was not alone while he was doing it?
Yes.
And what was his
Judge,
quote?
listen, we're getting so far afield from the events of June the 18th. This has got nothing to do with those events whatsoever. The status of his marriage and his fantasy life has got nothing to do with the events of June the 18th. We're just getting so far afield, Judge. This isn't relevant to anything.
Judge, this goes to his state of mind in the 2 weeks leading up to the death of this child.
So this occurred within 2 weeks?
Yes, Your Honor.
Overrule the objection.
When she talked about him exposing himself to her on that, and there's being somebody else there, what did he say?
He
Who
said-
is she? I'm just going to object.
Okay.
What are we talking about? Who is
This
she?
other person that he is messaging with.
Is it one of the two we know about?
It's several other girls, Judge. This is a different one. Thank you.
Judge, we
Overrule
don't
the
e-
objection. Yes, sir.
We don't even know if it's a girl. If it's just some person, have we identified them?
Well, would it be less relevant if it were a man?
I'll get back to you on that, Judge.
And from looking at the contacts, Detective, did you confirm via picture and name, and was this a female?
The profile that she put online is that she was a female.
And in addition to that, we talked about fantasy and things like that. Did you confirm through text and things like that this was more than fantasy and that he'd actually met up for things?
Yes,
And one of those occasions at Rope Mill Park in Cherokee County?
that is correct.
Judge, again, I mean, I don't even know where to go from this. What in the world is something that he's met up with somebody, whether he has or not, last month, last year? What in the world has that got to do with the events of June 13th?
Well,
18th?
as Mr. Barnes explained repeatedly, it's what he contends is evidence of a motive. However, I think you have beat the horse to death, Mr. Bourne. If you'll move on to facts of the case.
Thank you. And Your Honor, may I take one more shot at the horse just to explain his state of mind one day later? It's not to do with the sexting.
Is it the final question on this topic?
It is.
Go ahead.
Detective, in that same, on the 5th of June, he talks about being a guitar player with this girl. She asked him about cheating on his wife. Did she ask him a question about his conscience?
She did.
What did she ask him?
She
Now,
asked,
she's who?
She's this other girl he is sexting with.
Thank you.
and she does. And
Objection. That's
Same
no way
response.
relevant to anything.
Final question, he says, Mr. Kilgore. I'm going to allow a question and answer, and then we're moving on.
she says something to the effect of, do you have a conscience?
And what was his response?
Nope.
Now, again, talking about the marital problems and I guess Mr. Harris's state of mind, did you learn information from talking to him and from these chats about how his job was going leading up to the date of death?
Yes.
Okay. Where did he work?
He worked at the Home Depot.
Okay. Now, from looking at these chats and emails and things like that with his wife, did you learn that he was unhappy at work?
Yes,
Okay. Had he been passed over for promotion?
he had.
Was that April of 2014?
That is correct.
Going to May of 2014, did you learn that he actually interviewed with Chick-fil-A corporate?
That is correct.
And did he get that job or not?
He did not.
And was he depressed?
Yes,
Did they have life insurance on Cooper?
they did.
What type of policy?
They had two policies on Cooper. The first policy was the $2,000 policy through the Home Depot.
Now, the second one, was this something that they got back in 2013?
Yes, November 2012 is when he signed up for it.
Okay. And was this something that you still had at the time of the child's death?
That is correct.
And how much was the policy?
It was a $25,000 policy.
Now, in speaking with him and from looking through the text messages and chats with his wife and things like that, were they having any type of financial difficulty?
They were.
What type?
She was complaining about his purchasing, sporadic purchasing or overcharging the credit cards.
Now, who was in control of the finances at this time?
He was.
Did he tell you anything about his finances?
Yes.
What did he tell
He
you?
stated that the finances were fine, that they had recently charged up $4,000 on a credit card, and he had done that for the airline miles.
In looking at these phones and computers and things like that, were you able to examine any web searches that he may have done?
I did.
Okay, first of all, I'm going to turn your attention to the, I guess, website, Reddit, R-E-D-D-I-T for the court reporter. What is Reddit?
Reddit is an entertainment site, is how it bills itself. It's a social networking, news sharing, blogging type of site.
And on that are things called subreddits within the Reddit website.
They are. Subreddits are like a subculture or a specific, like or, for a person.
Basically a topic.
The topic would be a good way to put it.
Were there any topics of concern, first of all, regarding death?
Yes.
Could you tell the judge about that?
He visited several sites, and these subreddits, it was people who die. Once again, it may not be the perfect, but it's like people who die, and it shows videos of people dying. And it's in all sorts of ways, from suicides to Iraq, executions, those type of videos.
Now, anything in looking at these subreddits, turning your attention to less than 2 months before this child's death, did he go to any topics pertinent to this case and motive? And
He
what was
did.
in his mind?
He did.
Tell the judge about what subreddit he went to pertinent to that.
He went to a subreddit, it was called Child Free. And Child Free is people who advocate living child free. They advocate not having any more children and adding to the biomass, I guess is the best way they put it.
And when he went to this subreddit, did he actually view and read articles, or did he access articles in that topic?
He did. He, over 4 of them, or 4.
Was there anything about prison or anything like that you noticed in the web searches?
He did. He also did a search, how to survive prison.
A search to what?
How to survive in prison.
And specific, through your conversation with the defendant during his interview, did he talk to you, use legal terms and things of that nature?
He did.
Through your searches, just this preliminary look at his web searches, did he research any statutes in the state of Georgia?
He did. He typed in and asked for the age of consent for Georgia.
When you were speaking with him, what did he talk to you, and how did he speak about the charges once you told him he was being arrested first for the cruelty charge?
When I first spoke to the cruelty charge, he argued it and said it was an accident.
Did you later inform him he was also being arrested for felony murder?
I did. After the decision was made, and looking at everything we had gathered to that point, we did decide to charge him with murder. I brought him back into the interview room and sat him down to explain the charge to him.
When you told him what he was being charged with, what language did he use when responding to you?
He looked at me and said, but there's no malicious intent.
No malicious intent. Now, during the interview, just the last few questions on the topic of probable cause, did he discuss the issue of being afraid of his child dying in a car?
Yes.
What did he tell you about that?
He said it was a fear of his.
And did he explain further things he did about this fear that he had?
Yeah, he had researched and watched websites on this fear, 2 in particular. He had
First,
watched,
let me ask you, did he watch anything on television involving an advocate?
yes.
Tell the judge about what he said with that.
He watched a TV show where an advocate who had lost his child, and Ross said, just like me, in a child heat-related death, and now this gentleman was advocating for a turnaround program. He was very conscious of this because of this advocate and the turnaround program, and he said he practiced it often. And I'm sorry, for turnaround program means actually turn around and make sure there are no children in the car with you.
So he learned about how to do that.
That is correct.
And his claim was he didn't do it on that day, even knowing that.
Correct.
Did he talk about anything else about a video?
He did.
And what did he tell you at that point? Let's just talk about what he told you first.
He told me that we were talking about, of course, about Cooper's death again, and he stated that he had watched another video. And in this video...
was this based in the Internet?
And this is an internet-based video. And in this video, a vet got on there and told him about the heat-related deaths of animals in cars, and how you can't, even if you roll down the windows, that your animal could perish in the car.
And did he give you another example of how he was aware of the dangers of leaving a living thing in a car?
He did. He said when he was working for Tuscaloosa, a canine was left in one of the PD vehicles and died within 10 minutes.
I'm going to turn your attention to this video. You talked about these web searches that you did, or the examination you did to look at his web searches. Did you find a web search on his work computer, the Lenovo, related to what he had described to you?
I did.
Did you actually find the video on there that he described to you?
I did.
Could you tell the judge in detail what this video depicts?
The video, and I believe it's, and I might get the name wrong, it's like Ernie Ward, and he is a veterinarian, and he's advocate for, of course, animal care. And the veterinarian decides to do a demonstration about the dangers of leaving your animal in the car. So he goes out to a car, he sits in the car in the middle of the summer, it appears to be very hot outside. And he sits there for 30 minutes. And the video is about 6 minutes long. And through this video, he's showing you times and he's showing you temperature. The temperature in the car gets to over 117 degrees, or around 117 degrees. And he starts to explain how horrible a feeling it is to be in this car. And he goes over it several times. He goes, this is horrible. He goes, imagine if you couldn't move, if I wasn't a thinking person, I could reason through this, that if they were just trapped here in this car.
Now, this video, was it something that you, looking from your examination, that he had viewed once?
No.
How many times did he view it?
He viewed it twice.
And Detective, what day did he view this video last, according to the examination of that computer?
According to our examination, he viewed it on June 13th, 2014.
5 days before the child's death?
That's correct.
Judge, those are all the questions I have for probable cause. Do you want me to go ahead? I have some questions regarding bond with the detective. Should I go ahead now or reserve?
Might as well.
Okay, thank you, Your Honor. Okay, first of all, on the issue of flight and whether the defendant would be a risk of flight, do you have any concerns? Is there any evidence that you've learned through this case that he may be a risk of flight?
I do. I do believe he would be a risk for flight. Number one, he has already stated that he's got law enforcement experience, in his own words. Secondly, he is was a resident most recently of Alabama. During the interview, he stated he had no friends here and that his family, had no family here. His family is all in Alabama. Evidence is showing us right now that he's got this whole second life that he's living with alternate personalities and alternate personas, which would also make him a flight risk and, harder to, keep track of or to locate if needed.
Now, as far as contacting and intimidating witnesses, do you have any concerns from your investigation about whether that may pose a problem?
I do. He is a computer expert. All these people that he's been talking to, they've got catchy names. I believe he would be able to find them again. And since he has met them once, there's nothing stopping him to, and not everyone, but to meet them again.
And based on the breadth of this investigation, have you been able to positively identify and speak with all of these witnesses yet?
No.
Now, based on his actions at the scene, we didn't talk about this so much. When police officers approached the defendant, could you tell the judge about how he reacted?
When the officer approached, he was on the phone, and he was telling somebody that his child was dead. And they asked him to get off the phone, and he said no. And the officer asked him again, get off the phone, and he goes, fuck you. And so the officers were able to, at that time, took his phone away and placed him in handcuffs and detained him at that time.
And was he placed in the back of the patrol car?
He was.
And have you reviewed that video?
I have.
And does the defendant show any emotion or anything in the back of that patrol car while he's sitting there?
No.
Regarding calling 911, did he ever call 911 in this case?
No, he did not.
Finally, regarding the factor of whether he's a threat to commit other crimes, do you think that he may be a threat to commit other crimes?
Yes.
Okay. In addition, just to the nature of this offense, based on these chats and things of these natures and messages and the pictures sent, have you determined that he has committed other crimes?
Yes, I have.
And generally, what crimes and what would that have involved?
Right now, it's computer-based crimes, sexual exploitation of a minor.
And also, does it appear that he has committed 2 misdemeanor violations involving illegal contact with a minor sexually?
True.
I believe that's all I have, Judge.
Before you start, Mr. Kilgore, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
The condition of the child's body when it was removed from the SUV.
Yes, sir.
Can you give me more information? You
Yes,
said
sir.
the child was deceased. What is that based on?
The child, when it was removed from the car and placed down on the ground, the child was in rigor mortis, according to the medics on scene. The head was kind of up, the feet were kind of cocked back. You could see lividity starting. The child's eyes were half closed, the lips were discolored, and it appeared as if his tongue was protruding from his mouth.
And did anybody give you any estimation of how long it would take for the body to be in that condition after death?
According to, and once again, these are preliminary results coming from the medical examiner's office, he believes the child was dead before noon.
All right. You may cross-examine, Mr. Kilgore.
Thank you, Judge. Take your start.
Sir, how are you?
Good. First of all, on the issue of bond, where exactly do you think Mr. Harris could go in the United States of America and somebody wouldn't recognize him?
Several places.
Like a cave or something?
No, I think you can walk down the street and, someone wouldn't recognize him.
Have you seen the TVs lately, or
Actually, I have not.
Internet?
No, sir, I have not.
Newspapers?
No. No.
Okay. The warrant that we're here on today, of course, charges cruelty to a child in the second degree as the underlying felony.
Yes, sir.
So tell me exactly when Ross committed that particular offense.
Well, he committed the offense of neglect by leaving his child in the car all day.
Okay, so you're telling us then that act was completed at the time he left the child in the car and walked away?
Correct.
The warrant doesn't allege that act was intentional.
Correct.
Okay. And if it's not intentional, would you agree then that it would be unintentional?
I think the evidence now is showing intent.
Okay. The arrest on the 18th, there was a first warrant which charged cruelty to a child in the first degree.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And then you took a second warrant 5 days later on, 5 days later, the 24th?
Yes, sir.
6 days later or so?
5 or 6 days, yeah.
Okay. So at that time, you had done 5 or 6 days of investigation?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you then stepped the warrant back to cruelty in the second degree?
I would argue it's not a step back.
Okay. Well, you went from basically an allegation of willful to negligence, or
Yes, sir.
criminal negligence, right?
That is correct.
All right. Was there like one particular piece of evidence or so that caused you to make that change in the warrant?
Not, there's multiple pieces of evidence.
Well, what would you say was the primary piece of evidence that caused you to move from willfulness to negligence?
The primary is how it's worded. And it was the medical examiner's report came back, and he came back and said it was hyperthermia. Before we were going with dehydration, lack of sustenance, he came back, stated that, it was hyperthermia. The child did die from the neglect of being left in that car seat.
And that was why the decision was made to get a second warrant for second degree?
Yes, sir.
Now, you are the case agent, right?
That is correct.
Okay, so you pretty much know everything. All the information flows to and through you, right?
We try.
Okay. Well, you got computer crimes involved in this. You've got a lot of moving parts. They all report back to you.
They all issue reports, yes, sir.
Okay. And you keep up with that and you know what's going on.
I try.
All right, let's talk about the scene for a moment. At the scene, did you personally ever go to the scene?
I did.
All right. And at what time did you get there?
I got there about 5:07 p.m.
Okay. And what was going on at the scene when you got there?
When I got to the scene had been secured. Detectives were walking in the scene, getting their cursory views. Crime scene was on scene, starting their photographs.
Okay. And did you talk to the officers at the scene?
I did.
Who were the officers at the scene?
I spoke with Officer Piper and Officer Foglia.
Piper and who?
Foglia?
Foglia?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And had those officers interviewed witnesses at the scene?
They had.
Do you know who they interviewed?
I do not.
Okay. Did you interview witnesses at the scene?
I did not.
Do you know if there was any detective that interviewed witnesses at the scene?
Yes.
Who was that?
Detective Racy was on scene. Detective Murphy was on scene.
Did you say Racy?
Racy,
How do you spell that?
R-A-I-S-S-I,
Okay. And Detective Murphy?
and Detective Murphy. And I believe both of them interviewed witnesses.
Okay. Do you have a list of those who were interviewed?
I do.
All right. Can you tell me who those folks were?
I cannot.
How many were interviewed?
Multiple.
They didn't all give exactly the same story, did they?
No, sir.
In fact, you interviewed several witnesses who told you that Mr. Harris was absolutely hysterical at that scene.
I didn't interview anybody at the scene.
Some of your detectives interviewed witnesses who told you, or told them, that Mr. Harris was absolutely hysterical.
I'd say that's true.
There were witnesses who told some of your detectives that he was crying at the scene,
I don't recall anybody saying he was crying.
screaming,
I'd go with screaming.
in shock.
I don't recall those words being used.
Okay? Dazed.
I'll go with dazed.
Okay. And did you record all those interviews?
I did not.
Well, when I say you, I'm talking about the Cobb County Police Department.
Well,
I know you didn't do it all.
You need to be more specific in your question.
Did your detectives record those interviews?
Yes, sir, they did.
Okay. All right, and did your detectives get the names of the EMTs there as well?
They did, sir.
Okay. Of the witnesses that were there on the scene, isn't it true that some of them actually reported seeing Mr. Harris down on the ground trying to give CPR to Cooper?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And then there were some who didn't see that.
That's correct.
So the stories really were kind of all over the place, weren't they?
Yes.
Okay. But they all agreed that it was absolute chaos, didn't they?
I wouldn't use those words, but
Do you remember if one of your detectives interviewed a witness by the name of Leonard Madden, M-A-D-D-E-N?
I do not know, sir.
You have no idea what Mr. Madden would have seen if he was there?
No, sir.
Okay. You told us that Ross used profanity at one of the officers. How'd you get that information?
3 different ways. Number 1, the officer told me. Number 2, it was recorded on video. A video, I don't remember which one. You can hear profanity. And then from Ross himself in the interview room.
Right. And all the information you got was consistent that occurred when Ross was trying to get over there to Cooper, who was on the ground, and the officer was trying to keep him back.
No.
No?
No.
That's not what Ross told you?
That's not what Ross told me.
That's not what the witness told you?
I didn't speak with the witnesses.
Okay?
I spoke with the officer. The officer stated he was on the phone when it happened.
Okay. On the phone with who?
We don't know.
And she told him to get off the phone?
She did.
And this conversation between an officer and Mr. Harris would have been within what? 20 minutes of Mr. Harris discovering the body of his child?
Oh, less than that.
Less than that. Well, how quick did PD get to the scene?
PD got to scene, I believe it was 4:23 when the first units were arriving.
Okay. So you would agree it's certainly not unusual for someone who discovers the body of their child in such a way, very well could be in shock.
Yes.
Okay. Could be dazed.
True.
Could be showing a range of emotions from outrage to just blankness, correct?
True.
Okay. And that would be consistent with some of the information that you got, not you, that some of your detectives got from those witnesses that were at the scene.
Yes, sir.
Because he was all over the place.
Yes, sir.
You said that you've got a recording of Ross in the back of the cruiser.
That's correct.
Okay. Now, is it accurate that what you were told by your officers was Ross was actually handcuffed by 2 officers and put in the back of a cruiser, which was only about 100 feet away from where the body of his child was.
That's true.
And he sat in that cruiser in eye shot of his child under a blanket for what, 30 minutes, 40 minutes, an hour?
I don't know if he had eye shot, sir. It was parked on the other side of his vehicle,
Okay? How close? Within 100 feet?
within 100 feet.
And you said you discovered that there were a couple of phone calls that were made. The last one being a 6-minute call, you said that came back to Little Apron's daycare, right?
Yes, sir.
Right. Have you spoken to anybody at Little Apron's daycare? Do you know who he was talking to?
Not yet.
In fact, do you know that he was talking to anybody?
Well, it was a 6-minute phone call. They do not have a 6-minute messaging system there. So he was speaking, and it's an apparent he was speaking with somebody.
Okay. And you learned during the interview that he was trying to reach Little Aprons before his wife got there, to let them know, hey, keep her there, because she's going to find out about this. That's
Correct.
why he was trying to reach Little Aprons, right?
That is correct.
And that certainly would be consistent with someone who was in absolute panic at that time, correct?
I would say it'd be reasonable.
Okay, when he was driven away from the scene in the cruiser, was Ross taken directly to Persons to be interviewed?
Yes, sir.
Right. When he got to Persons, how long was he there before he was interviewed?
I don't have those times in front of me, sir.
Well, do you think it was more than an hour?
I would say less than an hour.
Okay. And during the time he was there, he was in a cell, right?
No.
No, he was just
No.
in a lobby?
He was unhandcuffed. He was placed into the interview room and
Okay.
given water.
Okay. And you recorded all of that?
That's all recorded.
So anything he said or did, regardless how it may be characterized, we're going to get to see at some point, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And then, who came in there to speak with him?
I did. And Detective Waldorf.
Who?
Waldorf
Waldorf.
with Crimes Against Children's Unit.
So by the time that you sat down to interview him, he had just seen the body of his son. It had been, at that juncture, less than 3 hours,
Yes.
less than 2 hours.
We'll say less than 3 for now.
Okay. Certainly a sufficiently short period of time where somebody absolutely could still be in shock, correct?
Correct.
And at this point in time, when you spoke to him in that interview room, he had not had an opportunity to see his wife, speak to his wife, or have any interaction with her at all, had he?
That's correct.
During the interview, was he expressing to you concerns about what in the world he was going to say to his wife?
Yes.
And he wanted to talk to her.
Correct.
And that would not be a remarkable or unusual concern for somebody in this situation, would it?
I would say no.
How long was the interview?
I believe the interview is about, and I'm going to say approximately, but around an hour. Hour and a half.
And it's audio and video?
It is audio and video.
Okay. So you went through the events of the day.
That's correct.
You didn't discover that Ross had taken Cooper to Chick-fil-A. He told you that.
Correct.
He told you that they went there, they went inside, they ordered breakfast, and they had breakfast there.
Correct.
And have you gone to Chick-fil-A to get a recording of those events?
We have.
Okay. And have you reviewed those yet?
I have.
Okay. And it's fair to say that what Ross told you about what transpired at Chick-fil-A, that was accurate.
True.
Who have you talked to at Chick-fil-A, or who have some of the detectives talked to at Chick-fil-A?
They talked to the manager.
Do you know who that is?
I don't, well, it's the owner-operator, I'm sorry, would be a more accurate way of putting it. I don't remember his name.
Okay. And do they remember seeing Ross and Cooper in there that morning?
They do?
Okay. Did he tell you that Ross comes to Chick-fil-A a lot?
Yes.
And have you seen his debit card records yet?
I have not.
Okay. Did he tell you that Ross comes to Chick-fil-A a lot by himself.
No,
He tell you that Ross comes to Chick-fil-A and goes through the drive-through a lot.
no,
He tell you that Ross comes to Chick-fil-A and goes through the drive-through in the morning and gets breakfast a lot.
no.
If you looked at his swipe card, you might be able to determine that, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Did Ross in fact tell you that normally he takes Cooper to daycare, then he comes back to Chick-fil-A, gets his breakfast, and then goes to work?
No, not normally. He said that occasionally he would.
Occasionally?
Occasionally.
That's what he told you, that occasionally he would take Cooper to daycare, then go to Chick-fil-A to get breakfast, then go straight to work.
Yes, sir.
During this interview, he told you that he drove straight to work.
True.
He told you that he forgot Cooper.
True.
He told you it was an accident.
True.
Told you that he parked in the parking lot. He told you about getting his briefcase out of the passenger seat and going into work.
True.
And you checked all that out, and that was all accurate. It was all true.
Correct.
He told you that he went to lunch at Publix.
Yes.
Okay? In fact, he told you the names of the two friends that he went to Publix with, right?
He did.
And who were those two gentlemen?
Alex Hall and Winston Millings.
He told you that came back to work. Right?
Yes.
Did he tell you about going to Home Depot to get the light bulbs?
No.
Did you ever specifically ask him if he made any detours other than just going to lunch, coming back to the office?
No, sir.
So you agree it's certainly possible that he forgot going to Home Depot to get those light bulbs?
No.
You don't think it's possible?
I don't think it's possible at all.
You don't think that's what happened? You tell me you don't think it's possible at all that he could have forgotten he went to go get light bulbs?
No, it's too many forgetful things in one day.
Okay. Well, what is the number of things that you can forget in a day and be okay? Is there a certain number?
I won't give you a number, sir.
Is it 6?
I don't think there's any way he forgot going to the Home Depot.
Okay.
He was very specific, and let me explain, but he was very specific in what he had done that day. Everything was specific. Everything had a time. Everything was in line, except he forgot his son, and he forgot that he went to Publix and that he visited his car at lunchtime.
He remembered going to Publix. He told you that,
Well,
but he forgot.
I'm sorry.
he
For
didn't
going to
tell you about
Home
Depot.
Depot,
Don't talk over each other.
he forgot that, and I'm sorry, he forgot they had gone to Home Depot and picked up the light bulbs.
So you now agree he did forget to tell you?
No, I don't agree at all.
Okay. And he didn't, obviously didn't tell you that his two friends dropped him off at his car and he tossed the light bulbs into the car?
He did not mention that.
Okay. So just so I understand what your position is on this is, are you suggesting then that he gives you the names of his two colleagues that he went to Home Depot with and who dropped him off at his car? He gave you those names, and yet he was going to intentionally not tell you about doing that?
Yes, sir.
That perhaps you just wouldn't talk to his colleagues or something?
speculation.
And there's cameras all over that Home Depot parking lot, right?
There are, sir.
So if he was going to intentionally not tell you that he had gone and tossed the light bulbs in the car, I mean, it's a pretty good reason to suspect he probably knew there's cameras in that parking lot, right?
It calls for speculation, sir.
Okay. Well, he worked there, what, 2 years?
2 years?
He told you that they had planned to see a movie during the day,
After work?
after work. What, during the day, he and his colleagues talked about seeing a movie,
That is correct.
and you checked that out,
We did.
and that was true.
Yes, it was.
And in fact, you looked at the chat log between Alex and Winston and Ross, and they talked about, starting early in the morning, they talked about going to lunch, they talked about planning to go to a movie, correct?
I don't have the full chat log yet.
Okay.
Or if I have it, I've not found it.
But you talked with Alex and Winston and checked that out, and sure enough, that was true. They were
Yes, sir.
planning on going to a movie?
They were.
That's right. Let me clarify one thing. Didn't one of his colleagues email you that chat log?
One of the colleagues just, and it was a blurb of the chat log, and it's not even really readable.
Okay. So if in fact that chat log indicated that during the day, the three of these gentlemen talked about interns that were working there, which school had the most interns, they were talking about going to lunch, talking about going to Publix, talking about going to a movie later in the day, that would be completely consistent with whatever Ross told you.
Except with the interns and the peripheral stuff, but, so I would say no.
Did Ross tell you that one of his colleagues was going to go buy the tickets ahead of time?
True.
Okay, and you checked that out, and that was true.
Yes, it was.
Okay, and it's true that, in fact, where he pulled over there off Acres Mill Road, that was on the way to the movie.
Correct.
From where his office is, he had to go that direction toward the movie.
Correct.
And when he pulled off, he had to take a right into the shopping center where Cinco is.
Yes, sir.
And his car literally was pulled in the middle of the road, wasn't it?
That is correct.
And you said one of the witnesses said he literally just heard screeching, the car came to a stop, and the man just jumped out.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So other than the fact that there was a trip for the light bulbs, which were tossed in the car, was there anything other significant that you think he intentionally didn't tell you about?
Well, except leaving his son in the car,
Well, I mean, he told you he left his son in the car, right?
and I'll give you that. No.
On Monday night of this week, some of your detectives executed a search warrant at the home of Ross's wife, correct?
That is correct, and if I may, with the previous answer I gave, he also failed to tell us anything about the sexting, for lack of a better term.
All right, well, did you ask about that?
I did not.
Okay. Oh, he didn't mislead you or lie about it, did he?
No, he just forgot or left out.
And if in fact that's got absolutely nothing to do with this accident whatsoever, then it's not relevant, is it?
I believe it is relevant.
Okay. Executed a search warrant Monday night of this week,
Yes, we did.
okay, at the home of Ross.
Yes.
And in that search warrant, you were specifically looking to see if there were any light bulbs out,
Correct.
okay? And you sent 3 detectives in there, and in fact, they reported back to you that sure enough, there were 3 light bulbs out in Leanne's vanity, right?
That's correct.
And these weren't just regular light bulbs. These were these round globe vanity type bulbs, correct?
Yes, sir.
And that's exactly the kind of light bulb that was sitting in the front seat of Ross's car, right?
They're very similar.
Just where he tossed them.
Yes, sir.
And you've reviewed the video from when Ross's friends brought him back into that parking lot and dropped him off at his car, right?
Yes, sir.
And you've spoken to his friends about that event as well, right?
That's correct.
And neither one of those men told you that Ross was trying to prevent them from looking in the car or driving too close to the car or getting out or anything of that nature.
No.
They just dropped him off
Yes, sir.
right there at his car.
Correct.
There's tinted windows in the back passenger area of that truck, right?
Yeah, it's factory tint. It's not very dark.
So on this video, of Ross getting out of his friend's vehicle, it's just a couple of feet from his, right?
True.
And on this video, you can see him get out, and he walks over to his car. And does he have a clicker that he unlocks the door with?
I would assume so.
Okay, well, you saw the video. He didn't stick a key in there and open it, did he?
Well, he walks up to it, and it's not that clear, but
Okay.
you can see him walking up there.
In the warrant
Mhm.
from June the 24th, you make some specific statements about that event in the parking lot.
Yes, sir.
You say during lunch, said accused did access the same vehicle through the driver's side door to place an object into the vehicle. Said accused then closed the door and left the car, re-entering his place of business, right?
True.
So in that video, you didn't see him get into that car. You didn't see him look around in that car. You didn't see him grab anything out of the glove box. You didn't see him pick anything up off the floor. You didn't see him look in the back seat. You didn't see him look over the back seat. You didn't see him looking around. See if anybody was watching. You didn't see any of that on that video, did you?
Not at the car.
Okay. Because if you'd have seen it in the video, it would have been in the warrant, right?
Possibly.
He just tosses the light bulbs in, closes the door, and walks away.
Yes, sir.
The car seat in Ross's car that we've seen in that photograph is a rear-facing car seat.
Correct.
It's in the middle of the back seat.
Correct.
So if he's on the driver's side, that car seat would be to his, behind him to his right.
Correct.
Did you ever ask Ross if he had any sort of physical limitations which might impair his ability to see or hear Ross or anything like that?
He said he had no medical conditions.
Okay. Did you ask him what medical conditions he had?
I asked him if he had any medical conditions, or if he was under the care of a physician, I think is my exact words.
Let's be exact. You asked him if he was
Well,
under the care of a physician.
I don't have my notes here in front of me, sir, so we're going to say,
All right. Well, I'm going to restate my question then. I apologize. Did you ever ask him directly if he had any kind of physical limitations which might impair his ability to see or hear his child?
Not directly.
Okay. Would that be something that would be relevant to your investigation?
No.
It would not. If he had a physical limitation, that would not be relevant to your investigation.
If you had a physical limitation, he couldn't be operating a motor vehicle. You'd have to be able to turn and see your rear view mirrors. You have to be able to operate that vehicle.
Okay. Would you be surprised to know that Ross is completely deaf in his right ear? Did you know that?
I did not know that.
Do you think that he intentionally kept that from you?
I don't know.
During the interview, Ross, I believe your testimony was that he told you that he had done some research.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Are those your words or his words? Did he actually say he did research?
No.
Okay, so those are your words.
Yes, sir.
Isn't it true that what Ross told you was he couldn't believe that this had happened to him because he had just seen a story on Fox 5 about the governor's Look Again campaign?
No.
He did tell you that?
No.
Okay. Are you aware of the governor's Look Again campaign that was instituted on May the 27th of this year to bring awareness to the leading cause of non-traffic vehicular deaths of children in the U.S.? Are you aware of that campaign?
No.
And you're saying Ross never told you?
Objection, asked and answered.
Sustained.
Did his wife tell you she was aware of that campaign?
No.
I want to ask you a little bit about, you've indicated there this messaging that's going on KIK. Is it KIK?
Yes, sir.
And you've got these records and times because it was on Ross's phone?
It's on several pieces of
Okay.
equipment.
Do you have the specific times that this messaging occurred?
Not with me.
Well, can you tell us the first time during the day that the messaging occurred?
No.
Well, did it occur after Ross had gotten out of his car and gone into Home Depot?
I don't recall, sir.
If you had information as part of this investigation that Ross had been doing this kind of fantasy texting or whatever, and he had been doing it prior to getting into his office building, that would be something you probably would remember, right?
No. There's so much information that we have to go through. It's only been a week and a half. I am still processing all the information. Yes, it will be very pertinent once I get the times and everything locked down. Information it's sketchy on some. It's on some computers and it's not on others. It looks like he deleted it from his phone, but then we'll find it on another computer. So we're still compiling all our information.
And that's hardly remarkable that you would delete something like that from your phone, is it?
No.
I want to ask you about these other videos that you mentioned. You said something about, well, let me ask you first about this information. It's your testimony that Ross and his wife were having financial problems,
Correct.
okay? And your testimony is that she told you that.
She did.
Okay, she used the words, "We're having financial problems."
Well, when I asked her, when I asked her about financial difficulties, she said, No more than other people, but Ross handles all those.
Okay. So Ross and his wife both told you they were not having financial difficulties?
Well, she stated like other people, as in everybody has financial difficulty, so no.
Okay. All right, well, their checkbook is not overdrawn, is it?
I don't know. I haven't received those records yet.
Okay. Well, you've been through all their mail during the search warrant procedure. You didn't see anything where any creditors were after them, did you?
I wasn't present there, sir.
Okay. Well, did your detectives report back to you anything of that nature?
No, they did not.
All right, so.
Give me 1 second, please.
For you, Bob, yes. I just want to know, is there any specific piece of information to confirm what your testimony was on direct, that these people were having financial problems or financial difficulties?
Just when I brought it up, Ross stated that they had recently brought up, $4,000, credit card. And she had stated that they were having problems like everybody else, or difficulties like everybody else.
All right, so it's fair to say the answer is no. You don't have any specific information that they're having financial difficulties?
No, that's not what I said.
Okay. They both have jobs.
Correct.
They make what, a car payment or two? And,
I have not received any of their financial information.
okay. Let me apologize, because I thought that I heard during your direct examination that your information was that these people were having financial difficulties.
And I
If
think
that's not
I've
what the-
answered, well,
Don't talk
let me,
over each other. When he finishes talking, you can talk, and vice versa. You finished with your question, Mr. Kilgore?
I am.
and I think I've answered that, Mr. Kilgore, several times now.
All right. So you've done some forensic review of Ross's computers from Home Depot. Is that the 11-0?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And is this where you observed some viewing of videos on the Reddit site?
Correct.
And it's fair to say that Reddit is a site that Ross has on his computer a lot.
Yes.
And it's kind of like a social media clearinghouse. People can post videos and stories and all kinds of things.
That'd be correct.
It's fair to say that he's clicked and looked at videos and stories on dozens and dozens and dozens of different topics.
Correct.
And one of those topics that you say that he clicked on at some point was something called child-free?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And when was that?
April
April?
2014.
Okay. And this isn't something that he typed in researching. It's just something that he clicked on that was up on that site, right?
It's the site that he went to. I don't know how he was directed to it.
Okay. So you don't have any evidence that he actually typed in a Google search or a Reddit search or anything for child-free.
True.
You testified that, I believe your testimony was that he searched on how to survive prison.
True.
Okay. Was that off the Reddit site?
I don't believe so.
Okay. Was that a specific Google search? I mean.
Yes.
Okay, you're saying that was actually typed in?
Yes, sir.
Okay. When was that typed in?
I don't have that date yet.
All right. So that could have been a year ago for all you know.
I don't know.
Well, y'all have looked way back, haven't you?
He says
Well,
he
we
doesn't
just
know.
started.
Okay. And you said Ross told you that he he had some law enforcement experience and that he worked in 911?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
In dispatch. What's his
All right,
name?
in dispatch, and he said he worked there for a couple of years?
5 years, I believe.
All right. And when you work law enforcement like that or work 911, you learn how to call out letters by military style by words, right?
True.
So if this is something that he would have done regularly as part of his job, that's not necessarily remarkable, is it?
I believe it was remarkable in the setting that it occurred in.
Okay. Have you talked to any of Ross's friends or colleagues to find out if he talks that way all the time?
I have not.
You said he watched a TV show regarding an advocate who lost a child?
True.
When was that?
I don't know.
Don't know?
Don't know.
Okay. Do you know the name of the show?
Do not.
Do you know where he watched it?
Do not.
All right, was it on a TV or a computer?
I believe TV.
You testified in direct that Ross said that he learned about turnaround.
Yes, sir.
All right, what does that mean? Or what did it mean to you?
What it meant to me is a turnaround program where, they advocate turning around and checking to see if there's any child in the car.
You think it's possible that what he was talking about there was the Look Again campaign that
Objection, speculation, and ask and answer.
Sustained.
The video that you said that was from a veterinarian,
Yes, sir.
that posted up on Reddit on June the 13th.
I don't know when.
Okay.
Oh, he read it. I'm sorry. I don't know when it was posted,
Okay.
but he accessed it on June the 13th, 2014.
Okay. And it's fair to say that you know with all certainty, that's not something that he Googled or searched out. It was simply a story that was, a video that was posted up on that site, right?
No, I can't say that.
But that's the site he saw it from, Reddit?
No, I'm not sure if it was Reddit or YouTube.
Okay. Because that video was actually shared on YouTube and on Facebook and several other places, right?
Yeah, when I watched it on YouTube.
Okay. You said that you were able to tell that he watched it twice.
Yes, sir.
What were the two times that he watched it?
I don't have the times.
Okay.
I know the date of the first one.
Okay.
Was June 13th. I don't know the date of the second one yet.
Okay. Could it have been the same day?
Possibly.
Okay. Could it have been that he got called away from his desk at work and came back and hit resume to play the balance of it?
I don't know.
But it could be.
I would not say that.
Okay. If there were two different times, that might account for it though, right?
Objection, ask and answer.
Sustained.
Okay. Leanna was first, Ross's wife was first interviewed at Home Depot at the Treehouse location.
Sure.
Who did that interview?
Detective Stockinger,
By himself?
Detective Racy was with him.
That's the one I can't spell. Okay. Was that interview recorded?
I believe so.
Okay, on audio?
Just audio. If it is recorded, it's audio alone.
Okay. Were they the ones that told Leanna that Cooper was deceased?
Yes.
And you learned that she had actually gone to Little Aprons to pick Cooper up
Yes.
and discovered there that he wasn't there.
Correct.
And somebody from Little Aprons then accompanied her to try to find out what was going on.
True.
Who was that person?
He goes by TJ. And I'd have to refer back to my notes. I believe his first name is Terrell.
Okay. And have you interviewed TJ?
I have.
Has anybody, you have?
I have.
You did interview TJ?
Oh, yes.
What'd he tell you?
TJ stated that he was at the front desk, Leanna came up there and stated that she couldn't find Cooper. She made that comment to him, saying that Ross must have left him in the car. He could be no other place. That time, TJ's like, there's a million places he could be. Have you tried calling him? She's like, it's going straight to voicemail. They went ahead and she's like, well, can you come with me over to his work? They got in the car. It was her car. And they drove over to the treehouse.
And Leanna confirmed, in fact, that it was a fear of hers.
Yes.
And do you recall if she told Racy or Stockinger or anybody else that she had just seen the Fox 5 story on Look Back?
I can't answer that, sir. I don't believe so.
People have all kind of fears, right? This was hers. That's what she told you.
She stated this was a fear of hers.
You knew that it was a forward-facing car seat. You knew that it was a rear-facing car seat, right?
True.
Okay. Did she tell you that Ross had been using a forward-facing car seat until very recently?
No. What she told me was, or actually is what Ross was told me, is that the car seat they're using they've had since birth. 6 weeks ago, they bought the forward-facing car seat. Leanna went to Alabama a couple weeks back. They swapped out car seats again. So Ross had been using the rear-facing car seat for the last couple weeks.
He had been using a rear-facing the last couple of weeks?
Yes, sir.
Prior to that, there was about a month, though, where he was using the forward-facing car seat up until about a week before this happened, right?
2 weeks before this happened. And the day previously, he used that rear-facing car seat.
All right. Have you looked at her cell phone, that being Ross's wife's cell phone chat box yet?
Just the stuff that she's downloaded to her computer.
Okay.
Judge, he's already said he hasn't looked at her phone or her chat log.
Well, is there an objection?
Objection, speculation, and no foundation.
I didn't ask you that yet, Judge.
Well, I mean, he's answered the question. I don't know, he's getting ready to apparently show him something here. Have you shown it to Mr. Bourne?
I have, Judge.
Is
I
it
don't know if that's the same picture from the scene.
Okay. Well, you've certainly seen Ross's chats on his phone, right?
Once again, sir, there are so many. It's been very sporadic. I've not had time to absorb all the information.
Okay. Well, I'm going to approach you then with Exhibit 1 and just ask if you've seen this one.
I have not.
You have not?
I have not.
Okay. Would it be relevant to your investigation to find out that at 3:16 on June the 18th, Ross had texted his wife, "When you going to get my buddy?" That'd be relevant.
Oh, it's very relevant.
Okay. And you've had his phone, but you haven't seen that.
No. The last actual text message, if that is a text message, was back in May. If that's a Kik or IM or Google Chat or I don't know where that came from, then yeah, that's probably still in there.
Okay. Judge, I think I'm about finished here. Thank you.
Any redirect?
Most holiday judge now.
Do you have a estimation of the time frame from the time that the defendant entered his vehicle at the end of the workday until he made the stop where witnesses observed him removing the child from the car.
5 or 6 minutes.
And what was the normal routine of who would take the child normally to daycare?
Normally, Ross would take the child to daycare.
So that was his routine.
Yes, sir.
And was it routine for the wife to pick the child up?
They split. Of the last 9 times, Ross has taken the child to daycare 6. He took it the Tuesday previously. And it was like 4 and 5. They split the duties, bringing them home.
All right. And did the wife, did she work out of the home or work somewhere else?
No, she worked as a dietitian out of the home.
Out of the home.
Yes, sir.
So she could come and go at whatever schedule was convenient for her.
I would assume so, sir.
All right, so you may step down.
Thank you, Judge. Thank you.
Anything else on behalf of the state?
No, Your Honor.
All right. Any evidence you wish to present, Mr. Kilgore, as to probable cause?
Yes, sir. We'll call a few witnesses, Judge, and I promise you I'm going to move through these as quickly as I can.
Okay, and these are relevant to probable cause?
They are.
All right.
We'll call Leonard Madden.
Step right up there, sir.
Raise your right hand for me, please. You do so solemnly swear affirm the testimony you're about to present today before this court will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
You may proceed.
Mr. Madden, pull that mic over in front of you, please.
Certainly.
Can you tell the court who you are, and if you don't mind spelling your first and last name?
Certainly. Leonard Madden, Leonard Madden.
Thank you, Mr. Madden. And if you could, just briefly, just tell us what area you work in.
The Ashford Dunwoody area?
Say again?
Ashford Dunwoody?
Ashford Dunwoody area.
Yes.
All right. On June the 18th, that afternoon, did you have reason to be in the Acres Mill area of Cobb County?
Not particularly, but I was there for lunch.
Okay. And where'd you have lunch?
A restaurant called Cinco's.
And can you recall about what time you had lunch?
It was after 2. I'd been there for a while.
Okay. And did you have any alcohol at lunch?
No, sir, I don't drink.
All right. Can you tell the court if you observed anything unusual or remarkable when you came out of Cinco's?
Indeed. My associate, my friend, it appeared that she was crying. So, of course, I approached to ask what the matter was, thinking that she would, of course, say something was just in my eye. She believed that someone had a heart attack and they weren't breathing. And when I looked into the direction that she was speaking and pointing towards, I went closer to see for myself what was going on.
Okay. What did you observe?
I saw a figure, but I wasn't able to tell from where I was walking who it was or the age. But when I got closer, I thought it was a doll. And about 3 or 4 feet away, I noticed that it was the body of a toddler. Right then, my heart dropped because I saw this precious boy laying there, lifeless.
Okay. Did you see anybody as you were walking toward him? Tell us what you saw as you were walking.
The father, Mr. Ross, had just given his child CPR, and about 2 other people came near to assist. As I got closer, you could just hear his cries and his desperation for his son to be revived.
Okay. What did you hear him say?
Well, he was saying, oh my God, my son is dead. Oh my God, my son is dead.
And did he say it matter-of-factly or plainly like you're speaking, or was it with any particular inflection?
It sounded as though he was saying it out of hurt and disappointment, out of desperation.
Was he screaming?
He was yelling, he was hollering, he was screaming, much as I would in the event I were in that situation.
And did you observe him sobbing, crying, anything of that nature?
All of that.
Say again?
All of that. He was crying, he was hollering, yes.
Okay. And if you could express to the judge kind of what Mr. Harris's demeanor was during this crying and screaming, could you characterize that for the judge?
Certainly.
What you observed?
Well, Your Honor, he was in total disarray, much as I'm sure anyone here would be in the event they were in that situation, as I would be.
Well, just tell us what you observed.
He was standing there, and he was walking around. He was looking up in the sky, and he was just saying, oh my God. He was screaming. He was very hurt. And
Yes, sir, you gonna tell us what you saw and what you heard.
I heard the desperate cries of a father who had just lost his son.
Well, you're characterizing things. Just tell us specifically what words you heard.
He was saying, oh my God, my son is dead. Oh my God, my son is dead.
And how close were you to Mr. Harris while this was going on?
I was roughly about 3 or 4 feet away from him.
How many?
3 to 4 feet, sir.
30 to 40?
3 to 4.
3 to 4.
Yes, sir.
3 or 4 feet away?
3 to 4, yes, sir.
And were you aware if there was anyone calling 911?
I can't say for certain, but I did see people that were there. They were on their phones, and he got on his phone, but I can't say matter-of-factly that they were calling 911 or anyone in particular.
Did you hear anyone yell, call 911, somebody call 911?
No.
And did you observe any sort of encounter between, first of all, how long were you there before police arrived?
I would say 20, 30 minutes.
Right? And when they got there, what happened?
Well, of course, they immediately came to the child, to Cooper, and they checked for vitals, things of that sort.
You don't know Mr. Harris?
No, sir.
You've never seen him before that afternoon?
No, sir.
Okay. And did you see the police officers interacting with Mr. Harris, asking him to do anything, dealing with him in any way?
Initially, they went to the child,
Okay.
and they were checking for vitals, after which Mr. Cooper, or pardon me, Mr. Ross, of course, he was coming closer to his son to view, and they wanted him to keep his distance.
Okay. What happened?
One of the officers raised her voice to him for him to stay back, and he told her to shut up. And
He cursed at her?
yes,
Okay. And what happened then?
2 officers, they approached him aggressively, and they put handcuffs on him.
All right, and did they put him in the back of a police car?
They did.
All right, and how far away was it from where the child was on the ground?
I'd say it was at least 100 feet.
400 feet?
100,
Oh, 100 feet.
yes.
Okay. And did you stick around the scene and make a statement to police?
I did. It was a short statement to I believe he said he was a homicide detective. I also spoke with 2 officers that were in uniform briefly, but they wanted to get our information, names and numbers, things of that sort.
Okay, and did you tell them what you are telling us in court today?
Not in depth. I told them that I was there. I walked up and saw what was going on. I saw Mr. Ross. I saw his son laying there lifeless, and others were assisting him or assisting, trying to give CPR, and that he was reacting, I'd say normally, to a situation of this magnitude.
Okay. And did it appear to you that it was genuine distress and grief on his part?
It was definitely genuine and very passionate and organic. I felt his pain. I even wept and mourned his son, and I've never met him.
All right. Thank you.
Sir, you spoke with the police at the scene, correct?
Yes, sir.
While this was fresh in your mind?
Yes, sir.
And you told them what you saw and experienced on that day, correct?
Yes, sir. Briefly.
When was the next time that you've actually told this story to somebody?
My friend and I spoke about it in the car briefly.
Okay. And when did you actually tell someone else about it?
I spoke with a reporter.
Okay.
They wanted to interview me.
So you knew there was media interest, correct?
I did not at the time that I gave my information.
Well, when they talked to you, obviously a media outlet's calling you, you know that they have some interest in what's going on, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. When was the first time you talked to the defense?
The first time I spoke with the defense was late last week.
And did you contact them or did they contact you?
They contacted me.
Now, the friend that you said you were there with, is that Artika, or am I saying that right?
Yes.
Okay. And you've seen her, she's been on TV as well, right?
I haven't seen her.
You've heard her describe that the defendant would yell and scream, "Oh my God, my child," and then he would calm down and relax, and then he would start screaming again. Have you heard that description from her?
I haven't heard it from her.
Okay. Now, you stated that she was crying, and that's how you came to find that this was going on. She was the first one to notice this, right?
Yes, sir.
So something had already happened to make her cry, correct?
Yes, sir.
So you came to the scene a little bit later than she did and the others did, correct?
Yes, sir.
So did you know Mr. Patano, the first person to get in that car with the defendant and the child and pull him out?
No, sir.
Okay. So he would have had a better understanding of what had happened right at the moment the child was taken out of the
Objection,
car,
that calls for
correct?
speculation.
I don't think that calls for speculation.
Well,
but
if it's what some other person thought it does.
I'm not asking what he thought.
He wasn't asking what he thought. He's saying he would have a better opportunity to observe. Is that what your question was?
And understand what had happened in the car at the time they pulled the child out.
Overrule the objection.
So you would agree he would have a better opportunity, correct?
Anyone there first?
Okay. Anybody that got there before you, correct?
Yes, sir.
Including Artika.
Yes, sir.
Now, you stated that y'all had gone to lunch. You said it was a little bit after, well, tell me, was it 2, 3? Do you remember?
I know it was after 2. I took a late lunch that day.
Was it possible that it was 3?
I can't say.
Possible that it was 4?
When I took lunch,
When you actually came upon the scene?
I would say it was around 4, a little after.
Okay. So it was actually, isn't it correct that it was 4:25 when this car pulled into the parking lot?
I'm not
4:20?
certain.
Okay. Now, did you see this other person, a person other than the father, trying to perform CPR on this child?
There were 2.
Now, did you ever see the defendant or hear him call 911?
I can't say that he did.
Okay. Now, you said use Cooper's name. How did you know his name?
It was on the media. It was online.
So you've seen this online and seen it in the news as well before you come to testify today, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you stated that the police, it took them about 20 or 30 minutes to get to the scene, correct?
Give or take.
Okay. Would you be surprised that police were immediately on the scene because they were looking for entering autos, crimes at that time, and they were there right when the guy pulled over?
That would be difficult to agree to because I was there and I didn't see them right away.
Okay. Is it possible that they were there within a minute or two?
No.
Not possible. Okay. You would agree that the records of the 911 calls and any police objective records would probably be a better record than your memory, right?
Calls for speculation.
Sustained, but I don't know what relevance of what his recollection is today matters anyway.
And you stated that the you know what, Judge? That's all I have. Thank you.
Any redirect?
No, Judge.
You may step down, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Anything else, Mr. Kilgore?
Call Alex Hall.
Come right up here, sir.
Raise your right hand for me, please. You do so solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to present today before this court will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Yes.
Mr. Hall, if you would, please tell us your name
It's James Alex Hall,
and where do you work?
Home Depot.
All right, and do you know Ross Harris?
Correct.
How do you know him?
We went to school together. We worked together.
Okay, went to school at, you mean you went to college together?
Correct.
Okay, and you worked together at Home Depot?
Correct.
How long have you known him?
Since sophomore year of college.
And you have a professional relationship with him because you work for the same company?
Correct.
And do you have a business relationship with him outside of Home Depot?
We run a small web development business together. Correct.
Web development business?
Correct.
What's the name of that?
Ninth Hour Development.
Okay, and is that a new startup type
Yes.
company?
Yeah, I think we've been around for 2-3 months now.
Okay. The day that we're here about, June the 18th, did you have any interaction with Ross on that day?
Yes.
All right. Tell us about the first time during the day where you had some interaction with Ross.
So as I've stated previously, we chat pretty constantly because of our business. So we're always in need of talking to each other. So we keep an open chat log together. I don't know exactly when I talked to him, but I know it was that morning. Probably around 9:30, if I had to guess.
Okay. And who all's on the chat log?
So myself, Ross, Winston Milling, and Jason Abdo. We're all partners together.
Winston Milling and Jason Abdo?
Correct.
Okay. And on this particular day, and just to make clear, you're in a different building than Ross?
Correct. So I'm in the main building, and he's in an offshoot called the Treehouse.
Okay. And during this particular day, you were chatting back and forth amongst the four of you. And was there anything particular y'all were chatting about?
We wanted to go see a movie that day.
Okay. And did you make a plan?
Correct. That was kind of the main focus. That and lunch and whatever else.
Okay. And is that a typical kind of conversations that y'all might be chatting about during the day?
I'd say so. I mean, nothing serious. Maybe if it has something to do with the business, we chat about that, but generally not during work hours.
Okay.
We keep it light.
All right. And by the way, this chat log, did you print that and provide that to?
That was Winston.
Okay, Winston provided that to the police department?
I believe so, yeah.
Okay. All right, so tell us about lunch. What was the plan for y'all to go to lunch?
In the sense that we just kind of said, hey, let's go to lunch, and then we discussed possible places to go, and then we landed on Publix.
Okay, it was like any other day?
Yeah.
Okay, and who picked who up?
I picked Ross up.
Okay, so you're driving, you pick Ross up,
Correct.
and where's Winston?
Well, I sit next to Winston at work in the main building, so we always go together.
Okay, y'all drove to lunch.
Correct.
Where'd you go?
Publix.
Okay, and how was Ross acting that day? Was he acting normal, or was he acting squirrely in some way?
I mean, I wouldn't say abnormal in any way. I would say normal as you could be.
Okay,
Nothing stuck out. Nothing was weird.
okay. Was he acting overly anxious or overly panicked about anything?
No.
Okay. What kind of conversation did you have during lunch?
I think we talked about movies. I mean, it was light. There was nothing.
Okay.
I mean, I honestly can't remember the exact details of what we talked about. You know, just shoot the shit. Sorry.
Could we move along, Mr.
Yes, sir.
Kilgore?
Yes, Judge. Look, was there anything unusual about the way he was acting that day that stuck out to you?
No.
It was a regular day?
Yep.
All right. So after lunch, where did you go?
Home Depot.
All right. And which Home Depot?
The one across from Publix. One across from Publix.
Why'd you go to Home Depot?
Ross needed light bulbs.
Ross needed light bulbs. All right. And so all y'all went in together to get light bulbs.
Correct.
How long were you in there?
10 minutes.
Came back out, and he had his light bulbs, right?
Correct.
By the way, is getting light bulbs something that y'all had planned before lunch?
No. I think it was something that came up at lunch. I don't think it was anything we planned.
Okay. All right, and so you leave, you're driving, and did Ross ask you to drop him off at his car?
Yes.
Okay, and did you see him did you see him approach and get into his car?
Approached, yes. Get in, no.
Okay. And did he have the light bulbs in his hand?
I believe he did, yeah. I think that was the whole purpose of him going to his car.
Okay, well, did he try to in any way dissuade you from not driving up too close to his car?
I mean, I drove as close as you would reasonably to drop someone off at their car.
Well, was there anything at all remarkable or unusual about the way he was asking you to drop him off at his car?
Nope.
Was there a plan later that day when y'all were going to go to the movie? Was one of you going to go ahead of time and purchase the tickets?
So the general plan was that we'd all kind of meet there together individually.
Okay.
Winston had to meet with his wife. And I think it was more of just, you know, we weren't going to wait on each other to get there. If someone got there first, and they would buy tickets.
Okay, and who was going to do you know who was supposed to get there first to buy?
I think Winston was going to get there first to buy his wife's tickets because he had something going on. But then I was going to buy Ross's ticket.
Okay. And is this the theater, in fact, that's right there near the Acres Mill shopping center area?
Yeah, right on.
And it's near Cinco?
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that restaurant, but I think it's in that area, yeah.
All right. And Ross never showed up?
Correct.
All right. Did you know why?
Nope.
Did y'all start trying to hunt him down?
Yep, a little bit. I mean, like, I texted him on the group chat, and then I called him a few times, and his phone was off.
Okay.
You say his phone was off?
Correct. You call someone, go straight to voicemail. I assumed it was off. I don't know for a fact that it was off.
Don't assume, just tell us what.
All right.
All right. Would this have been after the movie?
So, well, because I texted him during the movie, and then we didn't show up 30 minutes later. I stepped out to call him.
Now, did you know Cooper? Did you ever have any ever observe any interaction between Ross and Cooper?
A little bit, yeah.
Okay.
I mean-
In what settings?
His house.
At Ross's house?
We'd gone over there a time or two to discuss business. We'd gone over there for fun once or twice.
Okay.
Go to dinner, that kind of stuff, and I saw Cooper, so.
And did Ross and Cooper appear to you to have a good father-son bond?
Yeah, absolutely.
Did he appear to you to be a loving father?
Absolutely, yeah.
Did he appear to you to love his son?
Yeah, absolutely. He said it all the time.
What do you mean?
He said he loved his son all the time. He said his son was very important to him.
Okay. Was he the kind of guy that would talk about his kid to the point that other people were getting tired of it?
Probably.
Is that the kind of dad that he was?
You said to talk about his son to the point where people get tired of him, correct?
Right?
Yeah. He talked about him a lot.
You ever talk about, man, if I didn't have a kid, the life I could live? You ever talk about anything like that?
No, it was kind of the opposite of that.
What do you mean?
So it was more of like, your life changed when you get a kid, and I can't believe how much you can love someone and stuff like that.
That's the way Ross Harris talked about his son Cooper?
Yes.
All right. Thank you.
How you doing, Mr. Hall?
Good, how you doing?
So you know Mr. Harris basically from working a little bit in a social setting, correct?
And college.
Okay, in college. And that was Alabama, right?
Correct.
We won't hold that against you. That day, you said there was nothing abnormal, correct?
Correct.
Okay, he was acting perfectly normal. At lunch, before lunch,
Yep.
and after lunch while y'all were waiting to go to the movie. At least he seemed normal through the chats and texts and things of that nature. Okay, did you have any knowledge during that time that he was actually chatting with about 6 different women about sex?
No.
Did he ever mention that he did that?
Nope.
Would that surprise you about him?
Yes.
So if that is proven, you don't know everything about Mr. Harris, do you? And obviously you would be aware that he actually chatted some of these women about exposing himself and his child being in the same room.
It's not relevant to anything.
This is a fact witness. Sustained
Thank you, Judge.
objection.
So going back about the movie, were you the person that he had talked via message about 3:45 about when he was going to get there?
Yeah, I think, because we all kind of see the same message.
Yeah.
It's not like a direct one-to-one.
I got you. It's like a group, so everybody gets to see it. Okay. And at that point, around 3:45, he in fact said he was going to be late to the movie, correct?
Yeah.
The movie was at 5.
Yep.
And he said this to you, or the group, about 3:45, he was going to be late to the movie. Correct.
I believe so, yeah.
Okay. Now, when he talked about, or you talked about the car and approaching the defendant's car, you drove up, pulled, I guess, as close as a normal person would, correct? You didn't park on the other side of the parking lot. You didn't just drive right up to the front of it, right?
No.
Okay. And you said you saw him get out of the car and walk toward his car, but you never saw him open the door and get in it, correct?
Mm-mm.
So he obviously waited until you were passed before he did that, correct?
I don't know about waiting,
Well, it didn't happen until you were passed, correct?
in the sense that I wasn't watching him do it, yes.
Okay. And the light bulbs, I believe you said there were 6 light bulbs. Do you know how many he bought?
No. I mean, it sounds about right. A box of light bulbs.
Right. And light bulbs are pretty fragile, right?
Yep.
Yeah, you don't throw those around, do you?
No.
That's all I have.
Hey, redirect.
I don't have any.
You may step down. We've been going over 2 hours. The court's going to have to take a brief recess for about 5 minutes.
Okay, I'm going to talk to you a little bit first about the defendant's, the reports of his behavior.
That's all right. We've got to wait for your client. How many more witnesses do you anticipate, Mr. Kilgore?
On probable cause, I'm gonna call one, I think it'll be short.
All right.
Behavior at the scene of the crime, okay?
Bond issue.
Or the scene of where they pulled.
Three, but all will be very short.
Behavior at the scene of the.
All right, you may call your next witness.
Winston Millings.
I didn't hear the name.
Winston Millings.
Winston Millings.
Raise your right hand for me, sir. You do so solemnly.
The results of that forgetting, in this case, Judge, were absolutely catastrophic. The results were as bad as you can have for forgetting something. They were absolutely catastrophic. But an accident doesn't become a crime because the results were catastrophic. And that's what all this is about. The results were terrible, awful. And that man's going to have to live with those for the rest of his life, as is his wife, as is his family, as is the community. But that don't make it a crime. I'm going to ask the court to let us reset here. And by that I mean, Judge, they don't have the evidence. They haven't presented the evidence to you at this juncture, certainly, that there's criminal intent or criminal negligence. So I'm going to ask you to dismiss this warrant. Dismiss it. And in the cool of reflection, after we get rid of all of this, all the cameras, all of this, the district attorney, in the cool of that reflection, if they think at that juncture they've got the evidence of criminal negligence or intent or whatever they think they've got, and they can make those connections and that nexus, they can take it to the grand jury. But I'm asking you to give us a reset here, to clear all these people out of our community, and let's deal with it in the cool of reflection, not under all these lights, Judge. And the way to do that is, I'm asking you to dismiss this warrant, not just because it's the right thing to do, because they don't have and haven't presented to this court the evidence for this case to go any further at this point.
All right, thank you, Mr. Kilgore. Mr. Bourne?
Thank you, Your Honor. It was a good bit of theater here. It was interesting, he talked about leftovers. You leave leftovers in the car, you get out of your car, you go in your house, 30 minutes later you remember, I left some spaghetti in the car, or I left this or that. This was a child. Not a child left out for 30 minutes, not a child left out for an hour, a child left out in the car for over 7 hours. Judge, it is almost, and I'm not going to beat a dead horse, which I did earlier, the evidence is overwhelming. We submit of malice, but especially of criminal negligence. I'll cite one case to Your Honor, Court of Appeals case, Kane versus the State, July 31st, 2007 decision, applied felony murder, or criminal negligence. The defendant in that case was convicted. She let her kids, did not supervise them correctly, knew they were in her house, didn't supervise them correctly, didn't keep tabs on them. The children went out and drowned. They went out and drowned because of her inattention. And remarkably, in that case, part of that was due to, and it was admissible, that she actually had sex partners that night over and stayed up late and didn't pay particular attention to the kids because she didn't get any sleep. At a minimum here, Judge, to say that that is not relevant to his negligence, the fact that while that baby was out there cooking in that car, he was showing pictures of his private parts to other people, was totally talking to everybody else in the world about everything else other than his child, gets an email in the middle of the day about his daycare, goes out to that car, and tosses light bulbs in there. Who tosses light bulbs? I think it is remarkable and speaks volumes that he didn't stick his head in that car. He knew what he was going to find. He knew exactly what he was going to find. Judge, I think most importantly, one of the things you have is your common sense and reason, and you have those photographs. You heard the detective. You see where that car seat is. 30 seconds after he had kissed his son goodbye for the last time, he's at that decision where he decides to go to work. That's where he makes that decision. After making the U-turn where he turns right, which is the same thing he said he did when he notices the child later that day. And he decides to go on through and go to work. He decides to go back out to that car, and he decides to wait until the car's passed. And you heard from the detective about the video that the car had passed, and then he opens the door. He stops when a person starts walking toward his car and waits until that person passes, and then re-enters. That morning, he waits 30 seconds in that car after parking, after having had to turn around and back up. 30 seconds with that child right beside him. Judge, the warrant is for criminal negligence and felony murder based on cruelty in the second degree. We believe the evidence has shown much more than that. We believe the evidence has shown that this was intentional. However, at this point, we're asking you to bind it over on the warrant that you have and hold this defendant on this warrant, felony murder based on cruelty to children in the second degree. I just don't even believe it's a close decision, Judge. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Well, probable cause is a relatively low threshold, and the court is persuaded that at the very minimum there's reckless disregard for the safety of others in the conduct of Mr. Harris, in that the moments or seconds that elapsed between the time he placed the child in the car seat until he got to his workplace, which is a matter of moments, he allegedly forgot the child. And then for him to enter the car later that day after 4 o'clock in the afternoon when the child had been dead and rigor mortis had set in, and the testimony is the stench in the car was overwhelming at that point in time, that he, in spite of that, got in the car and drove it for some distance before he took any action to check on the welfare of his child. So I find there's probable cause for the 2 charges contained in the warrant. Anything else today, Mr. Kilgore?
Judge, I would like you to consider bond. I've got several witnesses, unless the court's inclined to just for us to discuss it.
Well, you have a right to present what evidence. You wish to state in your place what they would say, or you have 1 or 2 witnesses you want the court to hear from?
Okay, Judge, I'll call his brother Michael Bajents at this time.
All right.
So solemnly swear or affirm the testimony about to present today before this court will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Yes.
Sir, if you would please tell the court who you are, if you could give us your name and spell it.
Randy Michael Bajents Jr., Baygens.
Okay, and how are you related to Ross?
I am, my brother.
Can you tell the court why you don't have the same last name?
My mother remarried when I was 1 year old, and married Ross's dad.
Okay. And were you in fact raised with Ross?
I was.
Okay. We have heard something today about him having employment in law enforcement, but let me ask you first what it is that you do for a living.
I work for the city of Tuscaloosa as a police sergeant.
Okay. And what is your job there?
I'm the basic training coordinator for one of the regional law enforcement academies for the state of Alabama.
Okay. And has Ross, in fact, ever had any sort of employment in law enforcement?
He has.
And what was that?
He worked as a police dispatcher for the city of Tuscaloosa.
Okay. How long did he do that job?
I think a couple of years, 2 or 3 years, maybe. I don't remember the exact time frame.
Okay. And tell us, Ross graduated from college,
He did.
University of Alabama,
He did.
and he works at Home Depot.
He does.
All right, can you tell us how long he has lived in this community?
Oh, several years since he graduated from the university. 3 years, maybe 3, 4.
Okay. And of course, he lives with his wife.
Yes.
Okay. And do they have a house or an apartment?
It's an apartment.
All right. And that's here in Cobb County.
It is.
And his wife has a job in Cobb County as well.
She does.
Okay. Can you tell us, have you had an opportunity, or did you have an opportunity to observe your brother and his son together?
Yes.
Can you tell us about that?
He was a loving father. He loved his son very much. We went on family vacations together, and he was a good dad.
Michael, do you believe that if the judge were to allow us to have a bond in this case, do you believe that your brother would be out committing crimes?
No.
Okay. If the judge were to allow us to have a bond in this case, do you believe is there any reason to believe that your brother would not come to court as directed?
No.
Okay. Thank you.
How you doing, sir?
I'm good.
Sorry you have to be here today. How long have you been in law enforcement?
Almost 20 years.
Okay. I think one thing we've all learned being in law enforcement, that people we know, sometimes we don't really know what's going on in their lives. Would you agree with that?
Sometimes, yes.
Okay. Do you know where he's going to be staying if he gets out on bond? Is he coming to live with you?
I'd imagine he'd stay at his house.
Okay, so he would stay in Cobb County
I would think so.
with his wife?
I would think so.
And you or your family wouldn't be there to kind of watch him and make sure he shows up for court or anything like that, right? I mean, he's an adult.
He is an adult, but I'm sure we would be visiting him quite frequently.
Okay. Now, you stated that you told the judge you didn't think he would commit crimes while out on bond, correct?
I don't think he would at all.
Okay. Were you aware that he's actually committed acts that would be crimes in the state of Georgia in the past year?
I was not.
Did you know that he's been chatting with underage girls and getting pictures of their breasts sent to him?
I did not.
Would that change your opinion as to whether he would be likely to commit crimes if released on bond?
No, it does not change my opinion.
That's all I have, Judge.
Who would help him post a bond if bond were set?
His wife.
Does she have resources that you know of?
I think so.
All right, you may step down.
Judge, may I just ask one other question?
You may.
Is it fair to say that your sister-in-law and your family are not people of great wealth?
I think so, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
You may step down. Any other witnesses, Mr. Kilgore?
Melissa Sellers.
Ms. Harris had a medical issue. This is Ms. Penny Harrison.
Okay.
Okay.
Raise your right hand for me, please. You do so solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to present today before this court will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Yes.
Ms. Harrison, if you could just please tell the judge who you are. Spell your name.
Okay. I'm Penny Harrison, Pennyharrison.
Okay. And Ms. Harrison, what do you do?
I'm the children's pastor at Stonebridge Church.
Okay. And Stonebridge Church, the one that's on the corner right here on the square, just like across the street from this building?
Yes, it is.
Okay. How do you know Ross?
I know Ross and Leanna as members of our church.
How long have you known them?
Approximately 2 years.
Okay. And so the court will understand what is sort of the context in which you would be interacting with the Harrises.
Okay. Well, I met them when they started coming to our church in the summer of 2012. There was a fall of 2012, there was a small group that I was a part of as a staff member, and they were in that group. And then I also know them as parents of Cooper in our ministry.
Okay. And did you ever see Ross and Cooper have an opportunity to see them interact with each other?
I did.
What kind of parent did you know Ross to be?
I knew him to be a typical loving father of a toddler.
Are Ross and his wife involved in church activities?
Yes, they are in a small group, and Ross serves in our worship band. And Leanna has also served as a volunteer in our nursery.
As one of the pastors at that church, is it your belief that that Ross has some support there at the church, that being people that he can lean on that might help him?
Yes, I do believe that.
You believe that if the judge were to grant a bond, that Ross, it would be a risk to commit crimes?
No, I do not.
Okay. If the judge were inclined to give a bond in this case, do you have an opinion whether or not Ross would actually show up to court when he's supposed to show up to court?
I think he would.
And that's based on your personal interaction with him over the last couple of years?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right, Judge, I think that's all I've got.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Hi.
So you know Mr. Harris just through church, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Do you know him, like what goes on in his home life or anything like that?
No, sir.
Okay. And were you aware that he was actually, at times while on the computer chatting with other women about his church going and playing guitar, that he was in the same frame sending pictures of his anatomy to them and having sexually explicit conduct with them?
No, I did not.
And talking about cheating on his wife?
No, I did not.
If he were doing that, would you agree that maybe you don't know everything about Mr. Harris?
I know him in a church setting, and that's all.
Okay, that's all. Thank you, ma'am.
You may step down.
Thank you.
Anything else, Mr. Kilgore?
No more evidence for purposes of bond, Judge.
All right. What are you asking for, Mr. Kilgore?
They're people of limited means, Judge. I'm asking for a $50,000 bond.
Mr. Boring?
Judge, we are objecting to bond, given all the circumstances that he has been committing crimes even before this, that I believe it speaks volumes when he said via those chats, he was asked, do you even have, does your conscience ever kick in? And he said, no. It's obvious this man is leading two different lives, and I don't think he can be trusted at all.
Well, based on the number one murder charge, obviously, and facing a minimum of life sentence with a minimum mandatory of 30 years in prison, and conceivably in the future a possible death penalty case, the court will deny bond today.